Well, I'm excited to be here. I haven't been in the last two studies with you guys, but it's been kind of cool for me because I'm taking a class at Fresno Pacific, and it went along with this actually. So I'm going to share a little bit about what I've learned, and hopefully it connects with what maybe you guys have already covered. So in my class, I was looking at the life of Jesus through the Gospel of Matthew, and basically who Jesus was and what he did. And then I had to write a paper. I posted on it a couple nights ago about something had to relate to what I follow Jesus as it related to a specific topic. So it's kind of cool that I'm able to kind of share what I've learned. The first thing when Todd asked me about this topic, why would we follow Jesus? And I was kind of joking with him because I was like, why not? Like seriously, like why would we not follow Jesus? And I know that there's a lot of reasons why we might have trouble with that, but I mean, given like the first 2 weeks of what we've learned, like who Jesus really is and what he did, I'm like, how could you not be compelled to at least find out why you wouldn't want to follow him? And so I'm just gonna kind of go from that tonight. As part of my classwork that I had to do, we had to pick a topic, like a question. There was 10 questions we can choose from, and there was anything from encountering a homeless person to starting a business to being a manager of a business and somebody got sick. It basically put you in this situation to ask what Jesus would do, what he would have you do, and then would you do it? And so a couple weeks ago we sat in small groups and we kind of picked a topic and we broke it down, and one of the topics that a lot of people chose was if they were driving off of the freeway and we've all seen like a homeless person having a sign and asking for help or whatever. And a lot of people started to really look into the Bible, and they were like, okay, what would Jesus do? So we kind of dived into that as it related to what we had learned in the Gospel of Matthew, but we basically stuck through what Matthew's account of who Jesus was. And then we took that a step further, and what would Jesus have me do with what I've been given? And everybody kind of was able to answer that. And then the twist, it got really interesting when the teacher said, okay, what would you do it? And I mean, everybody would like have these answers, like Jesus would probably want me to take this person home, or to ask them questions, to pray for them, to give them a shower. I mean, there's like all these questions, right? And they're like relating it back to scripture or whatever. And then he asked the question, he was like, so would you do it? And people were like, well, when I see a homeless person, I normally do this. Or I don't really give them any money because I don't want to make a bad decision. And so it was like, everybody was like recounting like what they had said. And I was like, well, this is really interesting. I appreciate the honesty, but at the same time, I was like, and of course, they're like all different levels of, some of the people weren't even Christians in the class, like some people, but it was very interesting that people could get a very accurate picture of what Jesus would do in a specific situation and even come to a conclusion on what Jesus would want them to do. And then they were like, but I'm not really going to do that. So I just found that like super interesting. So I boiled down, like, it's a choice whether or not we follow Christ. And he invites us to do that. Throughout the gospel, I mean, he was always inviting people, like specifically like individuals and groups, and he was just like always this invitation to come with me, to follow me, to be my disciple. And so I wanted to start off tonight with in the first part of Matthew 4:18 through 22 is when it says when Jesus calls his first disciples. This is like right after he was tempted. Before that, he was baptized. So this is like basically the first time that Matthew accounts of him pretty much asking people to follow him. So he says, one day, Jesus was walking along the shore of the Sea of Galilee. He saw two brothers, Simon, also called Peter, and his brother Andrew. They threw a net into the water, for they fished for a living. Jesus called out to them, "Come follow me, and I will show you how to fish for people." And they left their nets at once and followed him. And this is the first account of basically Jesus, the first people to follow him. And so some things I found that were interesting is Jesus comes to them where they are. So these guys were fishermen. They said they fished for a living. So Jesus was at the Sea of Galilee, and he said he's walking along the shore, and he sees these two guys, and they're brothers, and they're doing what they do for a living, and that's fishing. And I found it interesting that he didn't go to like the religious leaders of the day. He wasn't at the temple. He wasn't in the synagogues or where people thought that the Son of God, who you guys studied about before, and what he was going to do. I mean, if you think about Jesus, I would have thought, maybe if I was living in this time, that Jesus would have picked the rabbis or the religious leaders of the day and said, hey, come follow me. But he didn't. He chose two fishermen, And so I thought that was pretty cool. And what they were doing, they were fishing. And they could have said no. They could have been like, nah, it's cool. We're cool. We're good fishing. I know how to fish. My father was a fisher. I live in a community of fishermen that fish for a living. This is what I do. I'm comfortable. I don't. It's okay. You can just keep going. Maybe somebody else down the road. So I never really, I've read this before, and I've never really given it much thought. Like, these guys had a choice, and what did they choose? They chose to say yes. They dropped their nets. They dropped the thing that they were taught to do. The thing that their father taught them to do. I mean, like, I'm sure before this happened, they thought they were going to be fishermen their whole life. And this guy comes, the Son of God, Jesus, I'm sure they heard of him before, and said, come with me. I want you to stop fishing for fish and start fishing for men. For starters, that doesn't even make any sense. How can you fish for people? Right? That's what Jesus did. He talked in things that kind of threw people for a loop. He was inviting them to participate. He didn't say, hey, drop your nets, let's go. And so, I mean, throughout the gospel, we see that Jesus is always sending out invitation. And so those are just some things I wanted to point out. So, I mean, like, wherever you are, I mean, you could feel unqualified. You could think, oh, I'm just so-and-so, and I don't really lead Bible studies, or I don't pray for people on, but, I mean, God meets you where you are at, and He calls us out. He invites us out into whatever He is doing. So yeah. And then we just, from that point on, these guys are following Jesus through the rest of the gospel. I mean, these guys are with Jesus. And I thought it was interesting, really, too. I was thinking about it. So they dropped their nets, and they left with Him. We never read throughout the rest of Matthew of them picking up their nets again and going fishing. So I thought that was really interesting. Jesus asked them to drop what they were doing and to follow Him. And I was like, I went back through this. I mean, we read the Gospel of Matthew like 20 times in my class, and they never were fishing like that again. So yeah, they were with Jesus when He was teaching and healing and declaring His kingdom through the rest of the gospel. They were like committed. Like they didn't retreat and go back. Yeah, Peter denied Jesus, but that's like a whole nother Bible study. So I just want to encourage you, wherever you are at, and if you don't feel like you're maybe even worthy of following Jesus.
Yeah.
She has nasal problems.
Yeah, it's okay. If you don't feel like you're worthy of following Jesus, like you haven't been to seminary, you haven't been going to church that long, maybe you didn't come from a family I didn't come from a family where the Bible was taught, and so yeah, I just want to encourage you guys there. Another thing that I thought too was kind of cool was the fact that we don't see them picking up their fishing net again, is that when we follow Jesus, it's not halfway. Like, we either follow Him or we don't. And I want to go to Matthew 16 and 24 through 26. So this, after a while of He's gather. He's been working for a while, teaching and preaching. Crowds have been following him, and he's been with his disciples. And he says, this is Jesus speaking in 24. Then when Jesus said to his disciples, if any of you wants to be my follower, you must turn from your selfish ways, take up your cross, and follow me. If you try to hang on to your life, you will lose it. But if you give up your life for my sake, you will save it. So Jesus basically lays down, like, if you want to be my disciple and you want to be my follower, you have to pick up your cross. And there's like a whole other thing onto what that would mean. But again, it's a choice. You have to pick up the cross. Nobody's going to pick it up for you. I'm not telling you. You have to do it. And so if you lose your life, for my sake, you will find it. And at first, when I first used to read this, I used to get like really anxious. Like, okay, I have to pick up this cross, and I have to surrender my life, and this is going to be messy. I mean, you just think about the cross. Yeah, there's a high cost to it, but it's inviting us into something different. It's inviting us into something better. If we think about what Jesus came to do, Jesus came to announce God's kingdom. And that is like way better than anything else. And it's so different for us because we don't fully understand it. I mean, we only understand what we know. And just like Peter and his brother Andrew, they all probably only understood how to fish, So yeah, as Jesus says, pick up your cross. He said, but I promise you will find your life, the life you were meant to live. I think that so many times we try and fit this into our life that's like we already have. So we go to, and I'm not saying that work is bad, but we go to work, we go to school, we have a family, we live in a neighborhood or whatever, and we try and squeeze this little bit where we can, like a verse, into a little bit of our life, or we try and squeeze a little bit into our life right here. And I really feel like Jesus invites us really, and to give all of us into all of who He is. I want to take when Jesus came and He was announcing His kingdom, it was basically because what was happening already was not working. Like, it just did not work. There was separation. People were not being connected to God, and they're not being connected to each other. So if we take that to where we are today, what we do apart from God, does it work for us long term? We might be able to make it work for a little bit, but is it going to last long term? And so I think that's what Jesus is inviting us into. I have something better for you. I have something that is going to fulfill you. I have something that I've created. My kingdom that I'm here to announce will bring restoration. It will bring healing. It will bring deliverance. It will bring reconciliation. It will bring all of these things. Where you have broken relationships. I mean, like, there was none of that in my kingdom, And so, He's inviting us into something better. And I didn't realize that when I first read this verse like a while ago, like years ago. I used to get anxious when I think I have to pick up my cross and I have to follow Jesus and I have to just nail my life to the cross and it's gonna be messy and it's gonna be painful but like in that, I mean, it sounds really weird, but Jesus always talks kind of funny if you think about what He's saying. You find your life, like you really do. You guys take like a seed, right? So a seed has to die all the way before it can germinate. Like it won't, it's like this process. And some seeds have to die certain ways than others. Jeremy has some of our fruit seeds in a refrigerator in a napkin because they have to reach a certain temperature for them to die. It's a crazy thing. I don't even understand it. But before, the tomato seeds can sit on the counter and die, or we can just collect the artichoke seeds off the top. So all that to say is, for those seeds to really germinate and to find new life, there has to come death first. And it's like, you know, are we allowing those things that aren't going to work anyways to die so we can experience this new life that Jesus is calling us into? I mean, think about the things. The disciples didn't have it all together when Jesus called them, right? So Simon Peter, I mean, and if you read in the Bible, they're like trying to keep people away from Jesus. You know, like there was this scenario in Matthew 20 where Jesus is leaving Jericho to Jerusalem, and there's a blind man on the side of the road, and he's begging. I mean, he can't see, and he's begging, and he's an outcast, and then that's a whole other thing. But he was like, Jesus, Son of David, and the crowd, who the disciples were in that crowd, were like, shh, be quiet. I mean, like, the followers of Jesus didn't have it all together clearly because they didn't get it either. So the point I'm trying to make is we don't have to get it to follow Jesus. It's not what he's asking us. He's just saying, drop your net, pick up your cross, and follow me. He knew that Peter was going to deny him 3 times. And he still called Peter. Peter, will you do this? Will you follow me? What I have is better for you. He knew, I didn't say it at the time, but I mean, like, Jesus is all knowing. Like, he knew that was going to happen. I want to encourage you there. Like, you don't have to feel like you have to have this crazy background to follow Christ. You don't have to feel like you have to have it all right. I mean, I've made more mistakes than I have successes, and I still feel like I'm making more mistakes every day. But it's cool because in those mistakes, I'm learning more about Jesus. I'm learning more about his kingdom. I'm learning more about really what he came to do for me and for others. And so it's that journey, right? So there was the journey that Jesus walked when he took up the cross and where he ultimately was crucified for our sins. But so the same is for us. Like, there's a journey that we're going to have to walk, right? And so we don't have to have it all together. We just say yes. We just say yes. We just drop what we have and say, God, we can't pick up the cross if we have something else in our hand. It doesn't work. Well, it might work for a little bit, and you're going to stumble and you're going to fall. But you know what? That's okay. You know, I feel too that I have to choose Jesus every day. You know, like, I make a choice and I make a commitment and say, like, I'm in this. I'm in this for the long haul. And when we say yes the first time, at least I didn't really know what I was saying yes to. And I don't really think Simon Peter and Andrew really knew what they were saying yes to too. They probably had their own idea, as with everybody else in this time period, of what Jesus was coming to do. That he was going to be this mighty king and overthrow the Roman Empire and deliver his people. You know, and I'm sure they were full of more questions. The longer they followed him, I'm sure they had more and more and more and more questions. Why is he doing it this way? Why does he let that woman who is unclean touch him? Why is he spending his time with this person over here? Why isn't he in the synagogue? Why? Jesus, like, why? You know, and so I just want to encourage you, like, why is okay? And there should be no fear in asking why. I think that's another thing that Jesus invites us into. That's like part of it, you know, is discovering this thing that he came to do. So I'm sorry, like, I have been processing this class for like 6 weeks, and the more I think about like who Jesus is, and the more I think about what he came to do, like, seriously, like, I don't say that lightly when I say, why would you not want to follow him? You know, like, why? So, I don't know. I'm even making sense because I have all of this information. Just kind of jumble around in my head. So, yeah. And it's worth it. Like, everything that Jesus ever said he was going to do, he did. Like, he cannot lie. Like, God can't, he can't lie. So if he says that if you pick up your cross and you deny yourself, I promise you, you will find your life in me. Like, that's something you can count on. As I said before, like, when I made a commitment for Christ, that was when I was in high school. I didn't really know what I was getting into. But I'm thankful. I'm so thankful that I did. It's not what I expected. I never would have guessed. But it's like so worth it. And so if there's somebody here today, if you're like really just kind of just figure out if you want to press in all the way, like press in all the way. Because he has never once not been with me. And I find that like every day we lose our life a little. Like, so if we choose, I feel like there are opportunities. So yeah, we make like a one time, you know, like the first time we say, yes, I want to follow you, Jesus. I want to see where this leads. But like I said, there are like moments every day where we get to choose him again. So, and what I mean by that is there are opportunities where we can say, okay, this is how Jesus will respond, or this is how Jesus is calling me to respond. Am I going to do that? Yes or no? You know, that could be as simple as trusting him. Like, there are two opportunities, and you might sense that God is leading you one way, but it doesn't make sense. But he's like, trust me. You know, you have opportunity. You could trust him or you can't. It's again that invitation to trust him, to follow him wherever he is leading you. Or maybe there is a conflict, right? There is something that needs to be resolved between you and another person, and the opportunity presents itself. Am I going to choose the way of Jesus right now? By loving this person the way that Jesus would want me to love this person. And that is choosing to follow Jesus. And so I think if we kind of break it down a little bit more and see it as there's opportunities throughout the day, there's opportunities throughout the week, that those little things add up, you know, and they might not seem like that big of a deal when we're in the middle of that decision, or maybe it might seem like a big deal because that's a big thing, but if you keep making those small choices and saying, I will follow you in this choice because this is what you want me to do. Yeah, you're going to have to die to yourself because maybe you're prideful. Maybe you are angry. Maybe you are, I don't know, whatever it is that isn't Christ-like, that you have to die to that. God, I'm fearful. I'm bitter. I need to forgive. I need to surrender that to you so that I can take hold of, God desires us to be whole. He desires our community to be whole. He desires us to be reconciled with each other and back to him. And that is a beautiful thing, sometimes a painful thing. But it's a beautiful thing in the end. And in that choice, we can learn more about him and more about his kingdom. And so it's like, that's what, when I read Matthew, it's like you read the disciples and you read them fumbling up sometimes, and you read, but they never stopped. Like, they kept going. They kept going. There were some times, like I said, Peter denied them, but they kept going. They didn't stop pressing in. And so, yeah, I just want to encourage you just to keep choosing Jesus. It's like an ongoing choice. Because when you look back after, I don't know, a couple months or even a week or a couple of years after following Christ, and you look back at all of those maybe little or maybe big decisions where you said, Jesus, I'm going to choose right now to follow you. Like, you lose your life a little bit. What you thought you wanted and what you're getting are two different things, and what God promises you is way better. In John 14:6, Jesus says, he is the way, the truth, and the life. It's just something that I kind of cling to. Like, Jesus is the way, he is the truth, and he is the life. I really have grown to love John chapter 10, verse 10. And it says, make sure I get it right. John 10:10. The thief's purpose is to steal, kill, and destroy, but my purpose, Jesus says, is to give them a rich and satisfying life. A lot of translations say abundant. Jesus is giving, again, inviting, and that's what he's inviting us into, is the abundant life. And I just looked that up, and it says exceeding measure. It's always over and above. It's something further. It's more, and it's much more than all. Okay, so when I saw that, when I read this, I pictured a cup, you know. And when we think it's full, like we think we're going to be satisfied when the cup is full, right? Well, Jesus says, I want to satisfy you so much that it's going to be constantly overflowing. It's never going to stop. Like, it's just going to be overflowing, overflowing. It's always going to be more. Think of like you need a foot of something. I'm going to give you a yard, and you're always going to have a yard. Okay, we think we only need a foot to cover the. No, I have a yard, and I'm always going to have. So it's like always more, and it's more than what we think we need. And so this life that he promises us, because I want to give you this abundant life, is more than you even think you need. And so then I started reading John, the first chapter, or the first couple verses of John, which talks about how Jesus is the creator and the sustainer of life. So this person who knows more, who is life, who was present, who sustains it, is saying, I'm coming to give you the abundant life. Okay, so, you know what I mean? Like we just start tying all this together, like who was Jesus? What did he do? Why should I follow him? Time and time again, we see him just inviting us, proclaiming this kingdom that is abundant. It's more than we need. We're never going to run out. And he's inviting us into this. So it's an invitation to say yes, to say yes, to say no too. Like we have that choice. In the world's eyes, that might seem foolish. But the world's ways are pretty foolish too, because that's not working. But they're what I mean, like check it out. Like check our government out. Okay, that is something that we've created, that we've tried to make work. That's okay. Our school is struggling. You know, everything that we touch, that we as people try to create with even the best intentions, misses the mark. Okay, the religious system of the day that when Jesus came, the Pharisees, I mean, it's something I learned about, like, the Pharisees had good intentions. They had good intentions. They really saw God's word as sacred. They really wanted people to connect with him. But they started just doing things to it with good intentions, and it started separating people from God. You know, and so Jesus is like, no. Everything that you've created is not going to measure up to what I have for you. So here I am, announcing this kingdom that is always going to be more than enough. Something that that my Father has designed to send me. He sent me to tell you about this. Now I would like to invite you into this, so that we can invite others into this. And so I think what I've learned more than anything in this journey that I fall a lot in is that when I used to use the world standards to compare everything to. So the things I thought were of a great value and were of a great cost to me, and the reality of God's kingdom, if you believe that's real and you believe Jesus is the Son of God, you know, it's like, but we were fishermen, and all we knew was fishing, right? So here I am, living in the 21st century, and all I know is what I've known. And so Jesus is introducing this kingdom, and we have it right here, and it seems so backwards, and it seems like it's not going to work because we don't understand it. But the more you choose, and the more you say yes to Jesus, and the more you say, okay, I choose you, God. I choose your way, Jesus. the more you lose your life, and you lose that scale that you were using before. That's not even valid. That's not really, we're using this ruler, this 12-inch ruler, and God's saying, no, you're my yardstick. We're using this measuring cup to measure our life, and God's like, no, I have this huge like river that's just gonna keep going and going and going, and so I think when we begin to do that, and we continue to trust Him and continue to choose Him, we begin to see what we were believing before doesn't even measure up to what we're being offered. So I want to encourage you, like, if you don't have any New Year's resolutions yet, like, choose to follow Jesus would be one. But like, seriously read the Bible. And I'm gonna post some. I should have came prepared with it, but there's some like really great reading plans. Like if you want to be really great and try and read the whole Bible in here, that's great. There's another one where you can read the key topics and just like 10 minutes a day and like read about Jesus.
That's good.
Read about God. Read about what this is that He's offering us. And so, yeah, if you don't like that, the Word of God has been so huge in my life. And even when I didn't really understand it, because this last, year, I feel like God is really making this alive for me. Not that it wasn't before, but He always takes us into deeper levels. He always takes us into deeper waters, right? And so, just learning. I mean, this is God's book. This is like who Jesus is. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And so yeah, I want to encourage you, if you don't have a New Year's resolution or something you want to try and do next year, I want to encourage you to make that one of them. A cool thing too as in Jesus invites us into this, and as we find our life, right, we get to share that with others. I think I posted a little bit about like that's this On-Ramp's motto, like the healed become the healer. Like that's big. As we make a personal decision to follow Jesus, and we say, yes, God, and that transformation happens. God does something in our heart, and we're able to share that with others. And that's what He's inviting us into. So yeah, and it's a choice. We could choose this invitation. One more thing. So I guess I feel encouraged tonight to just to ask you to think about maybe some of those things. Maybe it's one thing that is kind of, you're at a crossroad right now with one thing, or maybe it's a few things, and you maybe even know what you should do because you know what Jesus would be calling you to, or maybe you don't know. I want to encourage you to give that to Jesus. I think it's okay to not know, right? So it's okay to say, man, I don't even want to let this go. But I choose you. I choose your way. And I'll say too that On-Ramps has been like a really safe place. I think On-Ramps is a safe place to choose to follow Christ. I felt very other few places where there's this much grace and there's this much freedom. And saying, okay, I don't have it all together, but I'm going to try anyways. And I think we learn a lot in our mistakes. When I say me, I think we learn. So you say, God, I feel like you want me to. There have been things I know that God's wanted me to do. And I've been so zealous about it, or I've even been so broken over it, that I tried to do it, and it was a big mess. But God still used it. And I found out more about Him, and I found out more about His kingdom. I found out more about His grace. I found out more about His mercy. I mean, talk about the things that He came to introduce. He came to introduce love and grace and mercy. And we choose those. Sometimes we learn those things in the exercising of saying yes. So yeah, wherever you are, I mean, Jesus, He's not asking you to, He doesn't ask you from afar. He asks you, I mean, every time you see Him encountering people, He was always touching people. You know, He was going over to people that were even outcasts in His day. So yeah, He will meet us where we are. He extends an invitation. And He promises something that is abundant and overflowing and more than enough. So, you know, whatever you're holding on to, you just have to know that, like, whatever He's giving you, whatever He's calling you into, will be more than enough. So I want it to just end tonight. We have some time. And I really felt like maybe we could break off into groups, like maybe 3, and just be praying for each other. If you want to feel so safe to even share something specific about maybe you're struggling with a certain thing, one of those choices, one of those daily choices. You know, like Jesus, I choose to follow you in this choice. There were many disciples, or they were a group together. And yeah, there was Jesus, but they also had each other. And so I just want to tonight, just break off into the group of like 3 or 4, and just be praying for each other, and just see what God does. So if God speaks to you about something, or